Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 9 important articles for a detailed analysis. We will ensure that we will cover all these topics comprehensively, so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are liking our initiatives, do support us with your likes, your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now, before I start the discussion, I would like to tell the 2026 and 2027 aspirants that if you are interested to enroll for our online classroom program, and if you need counseling from our mentors, from our experts, you can get in touch with us by filling the Google form, which is provided in the video description below. Share your details. Our experts will get in touch with you to provide you the right counseling to prepare for UPSC civil services examination. So with this, let's get started by looking at the first article from page number 6. This column by the Hindu focuses on weather forecasting and early warning systems in India, because India is very prone to climate-linked hazards and disasters. Especially if you look at the recent monsoon season, there were several floods across India. There were deadly cloudburst incidents, landslides, and other related disasters, which are all an outcome of extreme weather. As you know, climate change and global warming has been driving the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events higher. Today we are witnessing more number of extreme weather events which are more intense, that leaves behind a trail of destruction. Several lives are lost during these disasters. There is also large-scale damage to property and infrastructure, and essentially the affected region suffers for many years, and it even gets pushed behind with regard to its development. So it's very important to focus on early warning, to provide for more accurate weather forecasting in order to mitigate and even prevent some of these disasters. For example, with accurate alerts and timely early warning, which is generated through well-developed weather forecasting systems, you can evacuate the population on time during cyclones or floods or during such extreme weather events, and thus you can save precious lives, thus mitigating or even entirely avoiding the disaster. So in this context, India has launched a very important mission Mausam, and this article is focused on analyzing mission Mausam, its features and objectives, and how it can transform early warning and weather forecasting in India. So let's dive a little deep into this article and understand all the key points, so that if there is a mains question based on this, you should be in a position to answer that. Of course, at the end of the discussion, we will take up a practice question as well, and we will try to see how you can build a model answer. So according to the article, in the last decade, there has been a 64% increase in monsoon-related rainfall in the country. And studies have shown that several parts of India are getting affected by such incidents of heavy rainfall. This leads to major floods and flood-linked disasters, including landslides. And the very same regions which are facing floods during monsoon, they are getting affected by the other extreme during the summer dry months. They are facing droughts and heat waves as well. So to tackle such weather-linked hazards which are causing these mega disasters in the country, we need better weather forecasting, so that accurate early warning can be generated and timely alerts can be disseminated, which is part of pre-disaster preparedness. Through this measure, you can minimize the disaster risk and make the country more resilient against these climate-linked hazards. India can become climate smart we can become prepared for extreme weather, which is going to become the norm in the coming decades. According to studies, 40% of the districts in our country, they're already vulnerable for climate-linked hazards. So this highlights the importance of accurate weather forecasting and timely early warning. So according to the article, 2/3 of India's population is directly exposed to the risk of floods, be it the Indo-Gangetic Plains or the Brahmaputra Valley or even the peninsular rivers of India, from Krishna Godavari to Kaveri Delta. All these river plains are highly prone to flooding. According to the writers, 2/3 of India's population, close to 66% of India's population is prone to flood-linked disasters. But however, only 1/3 of the population in the flood-prone region have access to early warning systems. So there is a big gap when it comes to flood-related early warning. When it's related to early warning systems with regard to floods, there is a huge gap where a large percentage of our population and a large geographical area is not adequately covered by accurate weather forecasting and early warning systems. So this is a stark contrast when you look at early warning systems for cyclones. Given India's vulnerability to the impact of cyclones, especially the vulnerability of east coast of India, we are much better prepared as far as early warning for cyclones are concerned. And across the coastline, even the west coast of India and even the island territories, Andaman, Nicobar and Lakshadweep, are well covered with early warning systems. Almost all the cyclone prone areas in the country have a robust early warning system in place. But if you look at flood related early warning, a large percentage of our population which is prone to floods, they are not covered by these early warning systems. So this shows the gap in our disaster preparedness. And this is where a project like Mission Mausam acquires a lot of significance. In fact, if you guys remember, we had covered this topic when it was approved by the Union Cabinet in September. So in the month of September, the Government of India announced the launch of this mission called Mission Mausam. It is a 2,000 crore rupees initiative to improve our weather forecasting, to provide more accurate weather forecasting results and generate timely early warning which can be disseminated to the target population. This mission will be implemented under the Ministry of Earth Sciences through 3 important research institutions, which includes IMD, India Meteorological Department, which is the nodal early warning agency for cyclones, floods and other meteorological hazards. And it also includes the National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting and the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, which is located in Pune. So these facts can be important for your prelims. There can be a factual prelims question based on Mission Mausam. This scheme will be implemented over the next few years until 2026, and in 2 phases, the weather network, the radar network and the entire weather observation network that we have, which includes a variety of sensors, that network would be improved with deployment of better technology, with deployment of better weather forecasting models, and as well as the deployment of advanced emerging technologies from artificial intelligence to machine learning to even eventual deployment of more satellites and aircraft to study the weather and meteorological phenomena. So it is a very, very ambitious scheme that has been launched by the Government of India that will bring in advanced technologies, increase the weather observation network and provide for more accurate and high resolution localized forecasts, which can play a critical role in minimizing the impact of disasters. So if you look at the mission, it will be implemented in 2 different phases. In phase 1, the first focus is on increasing the coverage of Doppler radars. Doppler radars play a critical role in tracking the rain-bearing clouds, which provides for important and crucial estimates about impending rainfall. The IMD currently relies on around 39 Doppler radars, which are currently operational in the country, to provide the color-coded rainfall alerts that you might be reading in newspapers. As of now, this coverage is not enough. Experts are pointing out that the current coverage of Doppler radars and other instruments and sensors in the country is not sufficient. There are several gaps that are present. And as a result, our weather forecasting is not very accurate. It can be made much better. It can be made more accurate, and the early warnings can be more timely, and it can be localized to suit the local context. Because certain hazards and disasters occur at a very localized level. If you look at cloudbursts, landslides, they are very specific to few villages, to few specific regions. So right now, if you look at the resolution of our weather forecasting, we use a parameter called NWP, numerical weather prediction. This parameter currently offers a resolution of 12 kilometers, meaning the current weather forecast which is given out by IMD gives you an accurate picture about the weather in a radius of 12 kilometers. But what if there is an extreme weather phenomena occurring at a much smaller level, at the level of a particular village or at the level of a particular mountain, where cloudbursts can occur, heavy rainfall can occur, leading to flash floods and landslides. So if you remember the recent Wayanad incident or the recent disasters in Uttarakhand, these disasters have occurred at a very localized level, at the level of a panchayat or much lower than that. So you need better resolution as far as the numerical weather prediction is concerned. Our current resolution is at 12 kilometers radius. We are giving quite accurate forecast with a radius of 12 kilometers. But this is a very large area. So we need to bring this down to around 6 kilometers. The goal of mission Mausam is to improve the resolution of NWP, numerical weather prediction, to a range of 6 kilometers, which will give more accurate and timely forecasts at a localized level. So what we need to do is improve the coverage of our observation instruments and sensors. So we need more Doppler radars, because when you compare with other countries like China and United States, India is way behind them. China has around 217 Doppler radars installed. It has 128 wind profilers. Compared to this, the US has 160 Doppler radars with 100 wind profilers. Whereas India has just around 39 Doppler radars, despite being one of the most vulnerable countries for extreme weather events. And we don't have a single wind profiler in the country. This is what the government of India wants to improve. We want to expand the Doppler radar coverage by installing additional 70 Doppler radars across the most vulnerable regions, and also deploy high performance computers. Supercomputing needs to be brought in. IMD already relies on few supercomputers for generating these weather forecast models, but we need better and higher performance computing to crunch the complex data and to run the weather prediction models to give the alerts. So there should be a constant improvement in supercomputing capabilities as far as weather forecasting is concerned. The IMD already relies on Param, Padma and other advanced supercomputers. But going forward, we need to scale up the supercomputing or high performance computing capabilities of our weather forecasting agencies. So large part of the investment will go towards this, and the mission will also try to deploy emerging technologies. Apart from setting up wind profilers and radiometers to enhance the observation network, apart from enhancing the observation network, there is focus on deploying emerging technologies as well, which includes artificial intelligence and machine learning tools that can provide more accurate forecasts. The mission will also focus on setting up a cloud simulation chamber in Pune. At the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, a cloud simulation laboratory will be set up to understand the cloud phenomena, to study cloud behavior, and even understand how cloud seeding can be made more effective. because cloud seeding has the potential to induce artificial rain. Under cloud seeding, when you spray aerosols or particulate matter like silver iodide into rain-bearing clouds, it has the ability to induce precipitation, increasing rainfall in a certain area. So such a cloud simulation lab will help better understand cloud behavior, cloud formation, and the entire meteorological process, which can be employed for improving the efficiency of cloud seeding as well. So the project will focus on setting up a cloud chamber or a cloud lab, and along with that, advanced weather models will be deployed that will be based on artificial intelligence and machine learning to improve the forecast resolution to 6 kilometers from the current 12 kilometers. This is the overall objective of the mission. The long-term goal is to improve the accuracy of weather forecasts by 5 to 10% from current levels. The focus is also on improving air quality prediction, especially in the polluted cities, by up to 10%, so that we can track the major pollutants, the 8 major air pollutants, to combat air pollution. The long-term focus is also on providing localized forecasts at the panchayat level with a lead time of 10 to 15 days, so that early warnings are available a good 10 to 15 days prior to the incident, which gives enough time to the local authorities to mobilize the resources to evacuate people and to take mitigative measures. And it will also provide more frequent short-term weather forecasts, because as global warming accelerates, climate change accelerates, we are seeing that weather is becoming more erratic. Weather changes very rapidly within 1 or 2 hours. So a forecast given yesterday might have become outdated because the actual meteorological conditions might have changed. So you need constant updates, hour-to-hour updates. And for disaster management authorities, this is very critical to carry out timely evacuation and plan the mitigative measures. So the goal is to provide more frequent and more accurate short-term forecasts as well. Right now, IMD has the ability to give localized forecasts up to 3 hours for every 3 hours. The long-term goal under Mission Mausam will be to bring this down to just 1 hour. So every 1 hour there can be an update, that too at a localized level, at the level of a panchayat, which gives sufficient early warning so that we can take the required measures under disaster management to minimize the losses. So the writers are suggesting 3 important steps. They praise the program, they appreciate the ambitious initiative of the government, but they are suggesting 3 important steps which should be included under the mission. Step number 1 is to ensure that we plug the gaps in radar coverage. See, I told you we have 39 Doppler radars installed in the country. But if you look at their distribution, there is a major gap, especially along the west coast of India. Because our previous understanding was that the west coast of India is relatively less vulnerable, especially to the impact of cyclones compared to the east coast of India, as Bay of Bengal generally witnesses more frequent, more intense cyclones compared to Arabian Sea. But of late, this understanding is changing. In the last 15 years, we have clearly seen an intensification of cyclonic activity in the Arabian Sea as well, which is being driven by the warmer waters of the Indian Ocean, in the North Indian Ocean. Recently, we have seen deadly cyclones occurring in the Arabian Sea, which have struck the west coast, especially states like Gujarat. Right now, if you look at the radar coverage, some radars are deployed along the Himalayan states, which are extremely prone, from Uttarakhand to Himachal Pradesh to Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, and even Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. So this is where around 9 Doppler radars are installed across the Himalayan belt. Then east coast of India, which is also very vulnerable to cyclones, is a priority, where 8 Doppler radars are installed, and remaining 17 are spread out across different Indian cities which have a major population. But west coast of India has only 5 Doppler radars, which is not enough. So given that climate change is driving more cyclonic activity in the Arabian Sea, which makes the west coast more vulnerable, there is a need to increase radar coverage. And also important cities, large major populated cities like Ahmedabad, Bengaluru, which even witness urban flooding because of heavy rainfall, they don't have a single radar installed locally. So these gaps will have to be fixed according to the writers. That is their first suggestion. We need to ensure that the 70 additional radars which are going to be installed along with other instruments, they should be spread out. They should be distributed to cover all the vulnerable regions of the country, including the west coast and the major populated cities of India. The second suggestion they are providing is something that's very interesting. They are urging the government and the IMD and the concerned agencies of Ministry of Earth Sciences to share the weather data in the public domain. See, this is a global practice. If you look at United States, United Kingdom, or even across European Union, even in Australia, these countries share the weather data in the public domain, which is then used by private enterprises to develop various applications and tools which are extremely useful during disasters and extreme weather events. In India, IMD does provide the data, but it is not easily accessible. So writers are urging IMD and the government under Mission Mausam to ensure that the weather data generated through these government agencies is made more easily accessible to the private sector, to researchers, to academicians and the startups. There are weather-based tech startups today. So with this data, they can come out with many useful applications and tools that can help the citizens at the end of the day. So sharing of weather data in the public domain, making it user-friendly and more easily accessible is a very, very good suggestion, a very valid suggestion. And finally, the third suggestion, to improve the dissemination of early warning. See, it's not just enough to generate accurate weather forecast, but you need to disseminate them. You need to give out the alerts on time. And the alert should reach the right stakeholders. It should reach the central authorities, the state level authorities, the district level, and even village level authorities. More importantly, it should reach every single person in the region which is going to be affected by the extreme weather. So how will you disseminate these alerts in real time? How will you ensure you reach the larger population and all the stakeholders so they can take precautionary measures? They can follow the mitigative measures which are planned as part of disaster preparedness. See, currently IMD does have a robust network of disseminating the alerts. It has a dedicated website which is updated in real time. It also has a mobile application, and NDMA has even started sending out SMS messages so that the citizens will receive direct alerts on their phones. Many of you might have received such messages as well. Let me know if you have got one such message from NDMA or IMD warning about extreme weather events or impending disasters. So this has to be made even better. The communication has to be made even better. Be it interacting with the media, because media plays a big role. Your newspapers, TV channels, and even the social media and internet plays a critical role in disseminating the alert, in spreading the information. And also one problem currently is that the alerts are not very user friendly. As in, if you have ever used IMD's web portal or its mobile application, you will find that the user interface, the UI, is not very pleasant. The user experience is not very easy. It's very hard to navigate through the platform and to derive the right information and alerts. So user experience should be the focus of these platforms which are disseminating the alerts. The message should be simple, clear, and even a common man, right, should be able to understand the degree of the threat which is raised by the alert. So the writers are correctly suggesting that under Mission Mausam, there should be focus on improving the communication of these alerts as well. These are important suggestions being given by the writers which can make Mission Mausam much more better and efficient, which can help India in bringing out accurate weather forecasts reliable early warning, localized alerts, which can help India prepare for the impending disasters. Because extreme weather events are only going to increase as a result of global warming and climate change. So this will make India climate ready. India will be climate smart. We will be prepared to deal with such extreme weather events, which can help in saving lives, minimize the damage to property, infrastructure and livelihood. So that is what we learn from this important column. So let's look at a practice question. In GS paper 3 under disaster management, or maybe even in GS paper 1 under geography, such a question can be given. Mission Mausam is a timely move by the Union government to make the country extreme weather ready and climate smart. So that is one part of the question. The question starts with a statement. So your answer will have to do justice to all the parts in a question, including the opening statement. Then the question reads, it comes at a critical time when extreme weather events are taking a heavy toll on lives and livelihoods. Evaluate. So if you read the question, comprehend the question, you will notice that there are three parts in this question. One is about Mission Mausam itself and the correct time at which the government of India has rolled out Mission Mausam, which makes it the second part of the question. Right, this statement which says that it's a timely move to make India extreme weather ready and climate smart. That is the second part of the question here. Next is, it comes at a critical time where extreme weather is already taking a heavy toll on lives and livelihoods. It's talking about the impact of extreme weather events. So that would be the third part of the question. So your answer, which has to be well structured, which should maintain a logical flow of thought, should do justice to all the three parts of the question. So maybe you can start your answer with the introduction focused on extreme weather events, climate change and global warming, and how India is becoming more vulnerable day by day. In one small paragraph, you can illustrate the link between extreme weather. The frequency, intensity of extreme weather has gone up, which has been linked with climate change and global warming, and present some examples or case studies or data to highlight India's increasing vulnerability. Right? We did that when we started the discussion. I spoke about the increase in monsoon rainfall and erratic weather, and how regions affected by floods are also affected by droughts. So you can present such case studies or data or examples to drive this point home, to clearly point out that extreme weather poses a big risk. The other option for you is to talk about the impact of extreme weather. This is another way of starting the answer. You can directly discuss the impact on lives and livelihoods. How extreme weather events like heavy rainfall, cloudbursts, or even droughts, cyclones, or heat waves, etc., how they are leading to significant impact on lives and livelihoods, affecting the economy, affecting infrastructure. You can give examples of recent disasters in India and around the world. So that is also a good introduction. So once you set the context, in the body, you can discuss about India's early warning systems, weather forecasting systems. Maybe paint a picture about India's current early warning weather forecasting systems. Right? You can explain what is the network of instruments and radars that we have. If you don't remember the numbers, right, you can at least paint a broad picture. You can point out the shortcomings as well, how radar coverage is not adequate compared to China and US, how weather forecast data is not shared in the public domain, it's not easily accessible, it's not user friendly, right? So point out the shortcomings in the current system. You can mention that the resolution is not narrow enough, it's not localized enough, it's not frequent enough. So mention all these shortcomings by discussing the current weather forecasting systems that we have, and then you can explain Mission Mausam. You can explain the features and objectives of Mission Mausam, how it can transform weather forecasting and early warning in the country. So in the same tone, you can end the answer as well. You can conclude by saying that Mission Mausam, it does prepare India to be climate ready, to be ready for extreme weather events, and thus save lives and livelihoods. So that could be a good conclusion, which is completely consistent with the entire answer, right? So this is how you build a structured answer. You need to ensure that there is a logical flow and a good structure which is built with relevant points. But to do this, you need to first understand the question and identify the sub questions which are present. So let's see if you guys can write the answer, and if you do manage to write the answer, please post in the comment section so it can help other aspirants. Now let's look at another important editorial on page number 6. This is related to the recent assault that Israel has launched against the UN system during the ongoing Gaza conflict. Over the last 1 year, as Israel has targeted Hamas in Gaza since the October 7th attack, Israel has been repeatedly targeting and undermining the United Nations and its related organizations and agencies as well. Now, this is a serious matter of concern which erodes the rules-based international order. It weakens the UN system, raises questions about its legitimacy, and Israel has been doing this consistently over the last year. For example, recently, Israel has imposed a ban on UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres from entering the country. You guys would remember the recent clashes between Israel and Iran after Israel eliminated the chief of Hezbollah. Hassan Nasrallah was taken out in Lebanon, and Iran retaliated against this, as Hezbollah was an Iranian proxy, and Iran launched hundreds of missiles and drones aimed at Israel. Correct? It happened just a few days ago. So following this attack, the UN Secretary General did not explicitly condemn Iran's aggression against Israel. So for this reason, Israel has placed a ban on the UN Secretary General, who plays a critical role in the UN system. If you look at the UN Charter, which is the Constitution of the United Nations, it provides for the primary organs of UN, the 6 primary organs of UN, which includes your UN General Assembly, UN Security Council, Economic Social Council, etc., and also the UN Secretariat. The UN Secretariat, which is one of the primary organs established through the UN Charter, plays a critical role in the functioning of the UN. It acts as the executive arm of the UN, implementing the decisions and resolutions of UN General Assembly and UN Security Council. It plays a critical role in environmental issues and as well as socio-economic development, sustainable development goals, and aids the Economic Social Council to implement these development agendas of the United Nations. It coordinates with all the UN member states, and hence the UN Secretariat as an executive arm of the UN is a critical organ. This is headed by the UN Secretary General. The UN Secretary General heads the UN Secretariat and performs a critical function. So UN Secretary General has a key role to achieve the aims and objectives of the UN, for which it was established in 1945 through the UN Charter. In 1945, when it was set up after the Second World War, one of the primary goals of UN was to maintain peace and stability, to prevent conflicts, to act as a mediator between rival countries and avoid wars and conflicts, to provide humanitarian assistance during wars and disasters and famines. These are the primary roles of the UN, and the Secretary General plays a critical role in achieving these aims and objectives of the UN. So by banning the Secretary General from entering the country, Israel is attacking the UN system itself. Israel might have a valid point that Secretary General did not condemn Iran's aggression, but the action of a UN member state against a primary organ of the UN, against a key position, the Secretary General's position, it undermines the rules-based order, it undermines the international legal system itself. And what is surprising is that India did not condemn this move by Israel. This is what the editorial is highlighting. Many countries, they criticized Israel for its aggression against UN Secretary General and against the UN system. In fact, many European countries, which are otherwise perceived as allies of Israel, and several countries from global south, from Africa, from South America, from Asia, many developing, underdeveloped countries, more than 100, they all got together and they have criticized Israel for its aggressive action against United Nations and the UN Secretary General. But India did not join this criticism. See, India might justify the stand by stating that it's a very realistic position that we are taking, as Israel is a strategic ally. India is trying to balance its position on the Israel-Palestine question. It's trying to balance its ties with the Arab states, with the Shia Sunni powers, with Western powers as well. So India might justify this as a balanced position, keeping in mind the strategic relations with Israel. But however, the editorial also raises a valid counterpoint. If India doesn't join the global south and support the UN system and rules-based order, which Israel is trying to undermine, this could backfire on India, because India is pushing for UN reforms. India wants to be a permanent member of the Security Council, and we claim to be the leader of the global south countries. When majority of the global south have united to criticize Israel's aggression against the UN, if India doesn't support them explicitly, this could undermine India's position within the global south. In fact, questions have already been raised about India's evolving foreign policy within the global south countries. Even European countries have raised an eyebrow regarding India's changing position. And it's not just this. Israel has done much more to damage the UN system in the last few months. Recently in Lebanon, where there is a blue line to maintain peace between Israel, Hezbollah and Syria, Israel has launched an audacious attack which has even harmed the UN peacekeeping forces deployed under the UNIFIL mission, the United Nations mission, the peacekeeping mission in Lebanon. Here you can see the blue line in the map that borders Israel and Lebanon, where there is a history of conflict, and also it extends to the Golan Heights of Syria, which is under the illegal occupation of Israel. So across the blue line covering Golan Heights and Nakura, which is the headquarters of the UN peacekeeping mission, across this line, the UN peacekeepers are deployed. The blue helmets have been deployed. Almost 10,000 foreign troops are deployed here under the UN peacekeeping banner. Now, this is where I would like to issue a correction, because last week when I discussed UNIFIL, when we spoke about Israel's attack on UN peacekeepers, I made one error. I apologize for the error. I regret the error. I told that Indian troops are not part of the UNIFIL mission. So I would like to correct this, because this was a mistake from my side. There are 900 plus troops from India deployed along the blue line who are part of the UNIFIL mission. So even though Indian soldiers are part of this peacekeeping mission, India is a major troop contributing country. We did not join the statement. We did not sign the statement by other troop contributing countries which criticized Israeli attack on UN peacekeeping forces. Some of the peacekeepers were injured. For example, a couple of Sri Lankan soldiers who are part of the peacekeeping mission were injured by the Israeli strikes. And Israel said it will not stop the assault as long as it is targeting Hezbollah. It said that it doesn't care about the UN peacekeeping forces. So other countries which had contributed the troops, around 34 countries, there were some European countries as well, like France and others, and many countries from global south. They have deployed their soldiers here to ensure their safety and well-being, which is a very important mandate of the UN peacekeeping forces. They issued a joint statement criticizing the Israeli attack, and they put pressure on Israel to stand down and to take a step back from the blue line. But India did not sign the statement. India did not sign the statement. Although we aligned with the statement later, aligning with the statement is different. It means India only supports the position, but we did not sign the statement. India did not sign the joint statement, even though there are 900 Indian soldiers whose lives are also at risk. And if Israel were to accelerate the attacks in southern Lebanon, and it could hurt the UNIFIL forces as well, leading to possible impact on Indian soldiers. See, previously, whenever Indian troops under peacekeeping missions have come under attack in Africa and in other conflict zones, we have condemned those attacks and we have constantly raised the issue of safety and well-being of the peacekeepers. But this time, India's position is quite troubling. India has not signed the joint statement. We only backed the joint statement. So there is a big difference between the two. We only aligned with the statement, supported the statement, but we haven't signed the joint statement. Again, India's position is that it's a balanced position. It's a realistic position to protect our ties with Israel while maintaining our position on safety, well-being of UN peacekeepers. But this balancing act of India could cost India heavily, according to the editorial, which is a counterpoint. See, I'm not saying the editorial is entirely correct. The editorial is largely giving a biased view. The government says this is a very realistic, justified position of India, keeping in mind our broader interests. But please be aware of the counter argument. The editorial is raising a very valid counter argument. If India doesn't protect the UN system, if it's not seen to be proactive to protect the UN system and its institutions, then tomorrow our claim for UN reforms, our demand for UN reforms could be weakened. Our demand for a permanent seat at the Security Council could be weakened. Because without the support of the global South countries, the developing, underdeveloped countries from Africa, from South America, we cannot aspire to initiate UN reforms. We cannot aspire to become a permanent member. In fact, prior to this, Israel even targeted the UNRWA, which is a UN relief agency for Palestinian refugees. Israel alleged that Hamas extremists had infiltrated the UN relief agency, which works for Palestinian refugees, and it brought pressure on UNRWA and cut off funding as well. Many allies of Israel, such as United States and others, they joined Israel and cut off funding to UNRWA, which plays a crucial role in providing aid and assistance to Palestinian refugees across this region, from Lebanon to Syria to Jordan to Israel and Palestine and Egypt. Across this region, wherever Palestinian refugees are present, UNRWA plays a critical role in giving humanitarian assistance. So for such a key agency, funding was cut off by many countries which are allies of Israel, when Israel alleged that Hamas extremists had infiltrated the group and used UNRWA to carry out the attacks on October 7th. But the point is, Israel has not been able to present any credible evidence to prove these claims. In fact, India itself is a major donor to UNRWA. Recently, after the Gaza war started, India donated $5 million to show that we stand with Palestinians as well, to show the balanced position of India. But we haven't condemned the deliberate assault that Israel is carrying out on the UN system, which is trying to undermine the rules-based order. So this weakens the UN system itself. That is the point the editorial is trying to make. And it's urging India to ensure that we keep in mind not just the relationship with Israel, but also our position on Palestine. India has always maintained a consistent position that we support the two-state solution. While this stand has been consistent, we haven't sided with Global South, which has criticized Israel's attack and assault on the UN system. Israel's constant undermining of the UN system, which has been criticized by the Global South, has not been wholeheartedly supported by India. India has been hesitant. So that is the concern. And the editorial says that this position of India could cost us the support of Global South. And this might make UN reforms difficult. It might make the path towards a permanent seat at Security Council more difficult. And it might undermine the rules-based order, the international system. So that is what we take away from this important article. So please take up this practice question. Israel's repeated targeting of the UN system during the ongoing Gaza conflict raises troubling questions. In this context, examine India's position on the issue. Now, when you're writing an answer to this question, please be careful. It is a controversial, debatable topic, so your answer has to be balanced. You can't simply blindly take the view of the editorial. That's why in our discussions, we balance the argument with a counter argument. The reason why India takes this position, sometimes favoring Israel, is because we have a strategic relationship a very crucial defense, security and economic partnership with Israel, which can't be abandoned. So it can be seen as part of India's balancing act. So when you're writing an answer to the question, you can definitely mention these three incidents where Israel has allegedly targeted the UN system. You can mention the ban on UN Secretary General from entering the country. No country has ever implemented such a ban. You can mention the attack on UNIFIL forces, the peacekeeping forces, right? And you can also mention the targeting of UNRWA and the cutoff of funding to UNRWA. Mention these 3 points to highlight Israel's alleged attacks on UN system. Then explain the position of India. Why India took this position, right? Present the view of the government as well. Present the counter argument as well. What is the risk for India if we don't stand with Global South, if we don't criticize Israel? And why the government is not openly criticizing Israel in this matter? Present both the views and arguments so that the answer is more balanced. Now let's look at the next article. On page 6, we have a column related to the Char Dham Pariyojana, or also called the Char Dham Highway Project, which is a mega road project coming up in Uttarakhand to facilitate the sacred religious pilgrimage, the Char Dham Yatra, also called the Chota Char Dham Yatra in Uttarakhand. So let's quickly understand this article. See, in Hinduism, there are several sacred pilgrimage sites in the country. We have a Bada Char Dham Yatra covering different religious sites in India, right? Which includes the historic Badrinath temple in Uttarakhand, Dwarkadish temple in Dwarka in Gujarat, Jagannath Puri, the legendary Jagannath Puri temple in Puri, Odisha, and Ramnath Swami temple in Rameshwaram in coastal Tamil Nadu. These 4 Hindu pilgrimage sites, they are part of the Bada Char Dham, right? But the article is not focused on this. So don't get confused. There are 2 different types of Char Dham Yatras in India. There is a Chota Char Dham in Uttarakhand. Within the state of Uttarakhand, in the Gangetic belt, in the Himalayas, there is a Chota Char Dham Yatra, and across India, there is a regular Char Dham Yatra covering these 4 religious sites. So this highway project, which is the focus of this article, is focused on Chota Char Dham in Uttarakhand. It covers 4 important pilgrimage sites: Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath. Apart from these 4, there are many other sacred religious sites in Uttarakhand. You have Uttarkashi, Govind Ghat, Rudraprayag and many others. One challenge for pilgrims has been connectivity. Given the difficult terrain and geography of Uttarakhand, accessing these sites has been a big challenge, especially during winter months, during a rainy season. Either there is heavy rainfall leading to floods and landslides. As you know, Uttarakhand is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the disaster-prone states in the country, right? And also during winter, some of the routes can get completely blocked by snowfall, by heavy snowfall. So there are challenges in accessing some of these religious pilgrimage sites. That is why the government of India has launched a mega project, the Char Dham Pariyojana, the Char Dham Highway Project, to connect these pilgrimage sites in Uttarakhand with a 900-kilometer road link. It's essentially a 2-lane highway project which has a width of 12 meters. Essentially, the existing highway network is being expanded and strengthened, and some new routes are being added as well to connect many of these pilgrimage sites which are present in and around the Char Dham sites. It's not only connecting Yamunotri with Gangotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath. Even other smaller pilgrimage sites are being interlinked and connected as part of this historic project. So this project definitely has a lot of potential. It will boost tourism. It will promote cultural and spiritual objectives by facilitating the Hindu pilgrims. It will drive economic activities. So without a doubt, the project has a lot of benefits, commercial, economic benefits. More importantly, it will make it easier for the pilgrims. Correct? So there is no harm in such projects, rather such projects are necessary. And also don't forget, this region is strategically vital as it shares a border with China and also closer to the borders with Nepal, right? Uttarakhand shares these two international borders. And given the hostility and tensions with China, there is a strategic objective behind these roads. Because this road project is designed to provide all-weather connectivity, be it heavy rainfall season or be it winter season when snowfall blocks the roads. These roads being built under Char Dham Pariyojana is aimed at creating all-weather connectivity which will enable the Indian Army to carry out military mobilization irrespective of the season or the weather. So right up to the front lines facing China and even on the other side with Nepal, these projects could be very, very critical, strategically vital for the Indian Army, for Indian Armed Forces to quickly mobilize the troops and even equipment to bring them to the front lines to strengthen India's security. So that is why the government has prioritized this project. It not only serves a sacred purpose to enable the pilgrimage, and it will not only promote cultural, spiritual objectives, but it benefits the economy. It has a very practical application and it serves a strategic purpose, a security purpose. But however, please remember the vulnerability of Uttarakhand and the vulnerability of the Himalayan ecosystem. See, this is a challenge we always face. The challenge between growth and conservation. That is the debate you need to focus upon. This ambitious project, which is under construction, it has faced a lot of criticism, opposition and challenges as well. Environmental activists are strongly critical of the project. They allege that the government has bypassed the required environmental clearances. Despite serious warnings and studies showing that heavy construction in the delicate Himalayan ecosystem is extremely hazardous, because large-scale construction is a major contributing factor to landslides, and Uttarakhand is one of the most vulnerable states in India for landslides. It is already impacted by extreme weather events such as heavy rainfall, cloud bursts. It is even affected by glacial lake outburst floods. So these extreme weather events, they frequently cause massive flooding, including flash flooding in Uttarakhand, triggering mega landslides. For example, who doesn't remember the deadly floods at Kedarnath itself a few years ago? Who doesn't remember the Chamoli disaster recently? It shows the vulnerability of Uttarakhand. It's one of the most vulnerable states in India, on par with Kerala, Odisha, Sikkim, Assam, etc. So the Himalayan ecosystem is very vulnerable, very sensitive, very delicate. Any large-scale construction which involves heavy equipment, this will also involve blasting work, where controlled explosions will have to be carried out to clear the path. The project will also result in large-scale deforestation, which will weaken the integrity of the slope, making it more vulnerable and prone to landslides. And also don't forget, once the roads are completely built, it will bring heavy traffic, and vehicular traffic is also a contributing factor to landslides. It weakens the structural integrity of the slope areas. So this is a major risk, and the government allegedly has ignored and bypassed these concerns. Although it has obtained the required clearances, the activists are not satisfied. They are pointing out there is a serious risk present here. The disaster risk is extremely high, and the government is blindly focusing only on growth, security, and ignoring the needs of environment conservation. See, whenever the debate of growth versus conservation comes up, or national security versus conservation comes up, you need a balanced approach. You need a focus on sustainable development. That is the only way forward. You need to strike a balance between the needs for environment conservation to protect the environment and biodiversity while focusing on growth and security interests. But of late, there are allegations that the government is pushing through many such projects, especially the Char Dham highway project, that poses a serious environmental risk along with a disaster risk. The article also points out that because of frequent disasters in the region, many villages in Uttarakhand have already become depopulated. People have left the villages. There are thousands of villages in Uttarakhand which today are not habited at all. They don't have any human habitation. There are many villages with very, very small population because most people have left the region because of the climate vulnerability, the environmental disaster vulnerability of the region. So, if the project aggravates the climate and disaster risk by eroding the environment and the ecology, this will only increase the migration out of this region, which could weaken our security interests as far as China is concerned. In border areas, in sensitive border areas, you can't have depopulated villages. That is a challenge for countries like India, and projects like this could increase the migration out of these villages. So the article is bringing all these points, right? Again, article is a little biased. It's more focused on environment alone, and in a way it sidelines the growth and security objectives. But this is where I would like to bring in the counterbalance, right? I would like to bring in a counter view. The government does have a valid point. Such a project can drive economic activity, boost tourism, make it easier for pilgrims, right? It can create a host of economic activities. But of course, we should balance it with the needs of conservation. We should ensure that in vulnerable areas which are prone to landslides and floods, we should restrict human activity. The establishment of hotels, resorts, and commercial establishments, it has to be tightly regulated. For that, we need zoning. We should implement zoning standards, focus on land use planning as per the disaster vulnerability maps, so that we avoid human habitations, human settlements in the most prone and high risk areas. So if that measure is implemented with adequate disaster preparedness and early warning, then the project is definitely justifiable on not just economic grounds, but also on security and strategic grounds. So please be mindful of the counter argument, because again, the column is a little biased only towards environmental concern. It's largely sidelining the growth and security concerns. So as a UPSC aspirant, you should build this balanced approach, and that is our focus in our sessions, to help you build that balanced narrative. That's why we go beyond the article. We don't stick to just what the Hindu is telling us, right? We of course take those views and points, and we also try to bring in a counter argument. Now let's look at another important article related to a major social issue, which is child marriage. Child marriage in India remains a social evil even today. Child marriage, I hope you know, is prohibited. There is a law, the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. The Prohibition of Child Marriage Act has banned child marriages in the country. So under the law, a girl under the age of 18 years and a boy under the age of 21 years are considered as minors, and any marriage involving such minors is treated as child marriage, which is illegal in the country. See, traditionally in patriarchal societies, this has been the norm. Not just in India, there are many other countries, many other societies which historically have practiced child marriage. The times, the context of that era in some ways justified child marriage, maybe in medieval times, etc. But in today's modern progressive world, there is no space for child marriages, because child marriage disproportionately affects both the boy and the girl, and especially the bride, the child bride, takes a bigger impact. Their education gets affected, their health could get affected. They barely have any awareness about sex education, reproduction, or contraceptives. So this could even lead to abuse of the female partner in such a marriage, right? There are many horrific instances where adult family members, right, have even molested, abused the child bride post child marriage. So clearly this is a social evil. The practice is outlawed. It is banned in the country. through the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. But what is unfortunate is that in many parts of India, particularly in some rural parts of India where patriarchy is very dominant, child marriage still continues in different forms. There is a practice called betrothing. It's a very traditional practice where families make these informal commitments to each other. You might have seen in these old movies as well, where such betrothals used to happen without the consent of the bride and the groom, who are minors essentially, right? They are in no way to give the right consent as well. They are below the legal age for marriage. The family members themselves will betroth the bride or the groom to each other's family, right? They make an informal commitment, kind of an agreement that tomorrow we will marry our boy into your family or marry your girl into our family, something like this. This is called betrothal, child betrothal. At a very young age, sometimes even when they are infants, they are hardly few days, few months old. Even at such a young age, there are few orthodox families which have this practice of child betrothal. They say that this child is betrothed to your family or your child is betrothed to our family. Such informal arrangements are stuck and eventually this leads to a child marriage. So Supreme Court of India has stepped in. It has looked at the continuing practice of child betrothals in the country, which enables child marriage eventually, and especially the child bride gets affected. Even the groom, the minor boy as well, suffers because of child marriage. It is a social evil affecting both genders. Supreme Court of India has taken a strict position and it has clearly declared child betrothals as illegal as well. That is why the topic is in news. The Supreme Court, a bench headed by the Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, has passed this order which clearly bans child betrothal as well. It is a violation of the rights of the child. It goes against international conventions like CEDAW Convention and the UN Convention related to child rights. India is a signatory to both. The CEDAW Convention, the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, it highlights the issue of child marriage and how women, especially the girl child, gets affected. The UN Convention on Child Rights also outlaws, bans child marriages, child betrothals, right? So India is a signatory to it. And the Supreme Court has reminded the government of these legal and as well as international commitments. It has urged the government to act. It has urged the parliament. It has urged the parliament to bring out a specific law that can ban child betrothal as well. We have a law banning child marriage, which is a formal marriage, but informal child betrothals are not explicitly banned in the country. So to ban the informal child betrothal, the parliament has been urged by the Supreme Court to bring out a law that can ban this practice. Is this clear? The government has been directed to bring guidelines and awareness in this regard. The government can frame a set of guidelines so authorities at the local level can enforce the ban, and the government can even focus on spreading awareness, especially at the school level, through well-informed sex education and greater awareness at the local level, right? We can ensure there is a behavioral change to ensure child betrothals are not continued in the country, because this could lead to violation of other laws like POCSO Act. POCSO is a critical law protecting minor children against sexual abuse, against sexual offences. And in a way, child betrothal, child marriages are enabling that, right? So that is why the Supreme Court has taken the stand against the social evil, and it has urged the parliament to bring out a law immediately, as soon as possible, to ban child betrothals as well. Clear? Now let's take a quick look at the prelim section. We have few small articles in today's newspaper, so let's go through them one by one quickly. On page 5, we have an article referring to habeas corpus. Habeas corpus has come up in a case involving the Isha Foundation, which is headed by a very popular spiritual leader, Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev. Isha Foundation has been at the center of a major controversy. A father has alleged that Isha Foundation has forcefully kidnapped and detained two of his daughters and he had filed a case, approached the court as well, and the Supreme Court, which was looking into the matter, has decided to close this case against Isha Foundation. After it was established that the daughters have willingly joined this spiritual institution, right, and it's not a case of kidnapping or forceful detention, the Supreme Court, which was looking into this habeas corpus petition, has closed this case against Isha Foundation. So that is the development. But what is habeas corpus? That is what we need to learn. See, we have a set of guaranteed fundamental rights under the Constitution. Under Part 3, right, a set of fundamental rights are guaranteed. If these fundamental rights are violated, we have a remedy in the Constitution, which is Article 32. This provides for different types of writ petitions. Writ petitions can be directly filed at the higher judiciary, at the High Court or Supreme Court, in case your fundamental rights are violated, which means they have original jurisdiction, primary jurisdiction. If you feel your fundamental rights are being violated, by using the writ petitions of Article 32, which gives the constitutional remedy to protect and uphold your fundamental rights, you can directly approach the higher courts seeking remedy from the higher courts to protect your fundamental rights. The different kinds of writ petitions are mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, quo warranto, and habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is one of the most important writ petitions. It essentially gives you a safeguard against any illegal detention. If someone has illegally detained you, be it the government or police or law enforcement, or be it a private institution or a private individual, if a habeas corpus petition is filed in front of the High Court or the Supreme Court, the courts can order the body to be produced. Habeas corpus is literal Latin translation, which means you may have the body. So if a person is missing, if a person is under police custody, or if a person has been illegally detained by a private organization or an individual, habeas corpus petition can help in bringing out the details of the detention, and if it is found to be illegal against the Constitution, then such detentions can be struck down by the court. So that is why habeas corpus is one of the most important writ petitions. It prevents the abuse of power by the government, especially. Right? Governments might tend to misuse police, law enforcement agencies to carry out illegal detention. And if habeas corpus is filed, the courts will order the body to be produced. They will look into the details of the detention, and if it is not valid, they will strike down the detention, ordering the release of the person. Even those who are held in private custody, right? Even in that case, relief can be obtained through habeas corpus. So that is why it is important. So this could be relevant for prelims. Now please read about the remaining writ petitions: mandamus, prohibition, quo warranto, and certiorari. Please be aware of the remaining writ petitions as well. Next, on page 5, we have an article referring to locust invasion in farms in Kerala, which are destroying the crops. Locusts are basically insects, grasshopper-like insects. So of late, in the farms of Kerala, especially near Idukki, spotted locusts have become a major infestation, and this has been destroying the crops. Crops such as banana, coconut plantations, even cardamom and vegetable crops are being destroyed by the spotted locusts. So this is a major environmental threat. In fact, a major locust outbreak can even turn into a global disaster. Recently, we have seen one such locust outbreak. Very recently, a few years ago, from Africa to West Asia to India, Pakistan, this entire region was affected by a massive locust swarm, where millions and millions of locusts moved from country to country, especially along the dry, arid region from Africa to South Asia, and destroyed standing crops across the region in multiple countries, which even led to food security challenges. It created food shortages, increasing food commodity prices. Now, these incidents are increasing as a result of global warming. Again, climate change has a role to play. The changing climate and extreme weather could result in such locust outbreaks, and swarms of locusts are very deadly for standing crops. They can destroy the leaves, and even the main produce of the plant can be destroyed by these locusts, leading to widespread crop destruction. So it is an environmental risk. It is also considered as one of the disasters which can even occur on a global scale. Right? If you guys remember the movie Interstellar, it looks at a dystopian future where crops have been destroyed by global warming, climate change, and as well as by locust infestation. So the outbreak of such pests could become more common, more frequent because of climate change and global warming. Next, on page 7, we have a column referring to the plight of Indian medical students in Ukraine. See, when Russia attacked Ukraine a couple of years ago, more than 20,000 Indian students were stuck in Ukraine. More than 20,000 Indians were trapped. Majority of them were medical students from India studying in medical colleges in Ukraine. So India evacuated them through a mission called Operation Ganga. Following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, India rescued the Indian community members, majority of whom were medical students, and they were safely brought back to the country through Operation Ganga. But many of these students, out of desperation, have gone back to Ukraine to study, to complete their medical course. This highlights the plight of Indian medical students. Is that clear? Because see, many students from India, they prefer medical colleges in other countries, especially in countries like Georgia, even Azerbaijan, Armenia, in Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, even China, and even Russia and Ukraine. Because across this Eurasia region, medical education is relatively cheaper, much cheaper compared to India. In India, I'm sure you know, without spending crores of rupees, you can't obtain your MBBS and MD degrees. It's almost impossible. This highlights the shortcomings of our medical education system. Very few students are able to aspire for medical seats in the country. Majority of them cannot afford medical education, so they look at cheaper options in other countries, from Ukraine to Georgia to China to Russia. So across the Eurasia region, you find thousands and thousands of Indian students studying in colleges in these countries. It's not only cheaper, it also gives them good exposure as well. The reason why Indian students have gone back to Ukraine despite the ongoing war is because out of desperation. See, some of them got a course transfer. Many of the students who came back to India under Operation Ganga, they managed to get a course transfer into some Indian college or into medical colleges in other countries. Especially in China and Central Asia, many students got shifted. But some of them couldn't get the transfer because of a lot of technical legal issues. So those students have forcefully gone back to Ukraine, right into the center of the battlefield. Despite the risk, they have gone back to complete their medical course, and this is not their fault. Don't rush to blame the students. Why are they going back to Ukraine? If they're stuck, again, government will have to rescue them. The blame doesn't lie with them because this is out of desperation. It shows the weakness, the shortcomings of our medical education system. If we had adequate medical seats, if medical education was affordable in the country, why would so many students go abroad? Right? So that is the issue we need to understand here. Now let's look at another article on page 8 related to security. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defence is studying India's preparedness with regard to non-kinetic warfare. So you should understand the term non-kinetic warfare. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defence is examining whether Indian armed forces are prepared for non-kinetic warfare, which is a type of hybrid warfare. See, in a conventional war, in a traditional war fought between regular armed forces like Army, Navy, Air Force, kinetic weapons are used in the conflict. When we say kinetic weapons, we are referring to rockets, missiles, bombs, and other kinetic options which causes physical destruction, physical damage, right? For example, airstrikes carried out by the Air Force is an example of a kinetic attack, or a missile launch by the Navy or by the submarines of the Navy, or a missile attack or a rocket attack by the Army. They represent the kinetic options with conventional armed forces. But today we have entered the world of unconventional asymmetric warfare, where hybrid options are becoming the norm. Non-kinetic options, where there is no direct use of force, where there is no physical confrontation occurring. Such warfare tactics have become very common. We are seeing this in the Russia-Ukraine war and also in the Israel-Gaza-Lebanon conflict. This has raised concern for countries like India, whether our forces are prepared for non-kinetic warfare, which is a type of hybrid warfare. So under non-kinetic options, it could involve a cyber attack or usage of electronic methods of attack. This could involve psychological warfare through covert operations, through influence operations, right? This could include supply chain interference, to meddle with the supply chain to carry out attacks. Usage of drones, armed drones, to carry out targeted strikes, using kamikaze suicide drones to strike targets, or using swarm drones to overwhelm a target and its air defense. All these are examples of non-kinetic warfare. For example, the latest pager explosions in Lebanon, which allegedly was an Israeli covert operation to target Hezbollah. So that is a classic example of supply chain attack with cyber and electronic interference. The propaganda of West against Russia, the propaganda of Russia against Ukraine and West is a classic example of psychological warfare done through influence operations, right? So this has become the new era of warfare, where non-kinetic weapons are being deployed, and in many cases they are much more impactful, much more damaging than even kinetic weapons. Today, a cyber attack can cripple a country's economy, right, without even firing a single bullet. It is much more powerful than even a deadly missile. So non-kinetic options are becoming the preferred way of launching attacks. They are becoming more deadlier than even kinetic options, which are conventional options. So that is why it is important to understand this terminology. So the Parliamentary Committee on Defence is reviewing whether Indian forces are prepared for these non-kinetic options. Imagine if, let's say, Pakistan were to launch a swarm drone attack on India, or if China were to launch a cyber attack or a supply chain interference attack on India. The question is India prepared? Do we have anti-drone technology? Do we have sufficient measures in cybersecurity? Right? So that is the inquiry being conducted by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defence. Coming to the last topic, Prime Minister Modi is all set to launch National Learning Week under Mission Karmayogi. The National Learning Week or Karmayogi Saptaha is being launched under Mission Karmayogi. So what is this scheme? What is this initiative? Mission Karmayogi was launched by the Modi government in 2020 to promote training, lifelong learning and capacity building amongst civil servants. The goal of the Modi government is to push the civil servants of the country, who are the backbone of our administration, to constantly learn new skills, new competences, build new capacities, and ensure they employ that in administration. The idea is to create lifelong learners. So this might be bad news for some civil services aspirants. You might think once you clear the exam, you don't have to study and prepare. But Modi government has different plans for you. Under Mission Karmayogi, the government wants civil servants to become lifelong learners. Meaning every now and then you are supposed to take up training, learning and capacity building modules, attend webinars, attend these classes and sessions to update your skills, your competency in your field of specialization, so you become better civil servants for the country, which is a great initiative. So under Mission Karmayogi, National Learning Week is launched. It's being conducted to encourage the civil servants to dedicate around 4 hours of learning in a week to attend these classes, webinars and sessions, which will improve their skills and competency. So that is what you need to know about Mission Karmayogi and National Learning Week. So on this note, I would like to bring my discussion to an end. I hope you guys have liked the session, understood everything, and if you did, please let me know in the comments and don't forget to press the like button. So that is it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Have a good day.